It's one exam down, 2 to go. Yes, crime and punishment, or whatever you did for your paper 1, so medicine or warfare, done. Only 2 exams left to go. So I'm going to go over briefly an overview of what you need to do in your paper 2 exam. So I'm going to do a kind of brief, the question structure, and then also just talk about the exam a little bit. So I've got these little flashcards here that I made last year telling me about everything, and I'm going to go through these so that I don't forget anything. First of all, it's paper 2. It's happening on Thursday afternoon, I believe. It's your period study and British depth study, and it's going to be on the topic of, now in my case, it's going to be split into 2 sections, so the first half there'll be 3 questions on the first topic, and I did the American West, but there are some other topics. I'm going to get up a list here of all the topics that you can do it on. Where is my list? There it is. You can also do it on Spain and the New World, British America, the American West, superpower relations in the Cold War, and conflict in the Middle East. So whichever one of those 5 topics you do will be the first half of your paper. And then the second half of your paper, part B, will be another 3 questions, and that will be one of 4 things. So you'll have a paper that either says medieval depth options, and that will be if you do Anglo-Saxon and Norman England for your second bit of your paper, or the reigns of King Richard I and King John. And then there's also the Tudor depth options. So if you do either Henry VIII and his ministers, or early Elizabethan England, then it will say that on the front of your paper, and that will be the topic that comes up in the second half of your paper. So you'll be doing one of those 4 topics. So I personally did Anglo-Saxon and Norman England because that's what my school did, but you won't necessarily be doing that in your paper 2. Questions wise, as I said, it's split into 2 sections. The first question will be a consequence question, so it'll be 2 consequences of, and it will be an 8-mark question overall, but it's kind of split into 2 4-markers. Question 2 is a narrative account, which is again 8 marks. Question 3 is importance, which is sort of 16 marks, but it's split into 2, 8 markers essentially. So you tick 2 out of the 3 boxes, and you answer, so it will give you a choice of explain the importance of, and there'll be 3 choices, and you tick 2 of them. So you'll tick 1, and then you'll write 8 marks worth of answer for it, and then you'll tick another and write 8 marks worth of answer for that one, if you get what I mean. And then that's the big question at the end of section A, and then you move on to section B, which has a 2 features of question, so another 4-mark features question. Reasonably simple. 12-mark explain question, which I have a nice video on, if you haven't seen it. It's completely blown up. Well, blown up compared to the size of my channel. And then finally ends with a how far do you agree question, which is 16 marks. It doesn't mark you on SPAG, so spelling, punctuation and grammar, for that 16 marker, but obviously it's good to have good spelling, punctuation and grammar anyway. So yeah, there's a little overview there. Line it up. Overview flashcard, if you can read that. Remember everything on there. So if we go over how to answer the first question will be a consequence question. And I have up behind here, if I swap over, I have a paper 2, the paper 2 that I did last year, and if I scroll down, here you got consequence question. So you can see how it's split up into consequence 1 and consequence 2. Then the total that you have here is 8 marks. So the way I would address this question is, first of all, you've got to come up with the first consequence. Consequence of the gold rush for migration. I'm trying to think like the establishment of the Oregon Trail or something like that. So essentially this is another Peel question, or Peel paragraph, the way you answer it. So consequence 1 you do a Peel, consequence 2 you do a Peel. The difference between this and a 12 marker, where you've got point, evidence, explain, link, even though you're doing that in both types of question, in a 12 marker you would say one reason for. Here you're saying one consequence of. So rather than addressing what caused something, you're addressing what happened because of something. And that's the line you got to make sure that you keep. But it's reasonably simple, this question. Shouldn't have too much difficulty with it, presuming they give you a nice question. I mean, this one's quite nice. I like this one because I think I did 2 practices of that question already before the actual exam. And then we move on to a slightly more challenging question. Question 2 is a narrative account. Now this one here, like last year, came up interestingly because you'll notice here it says 1862 to 1864, and if you look here, it's talking about the key events of the conflicts in the Plains Indians conflict, and it's got talking about Little Crow, and then it's got Colonel Shivington, which will be the Battle of Little Bighorn, and then it wants a third thing, and logically the third thing, obviously you won't notice this if you don't do the American West, would be Red Cloud's War. But Red Cloud's War, I believe, was 1866, so it's outside this time bracket. And if you look through the textbook, the American West textbook, you'll find that there's nothing really that fits within the time bracket. The time bracket's too small. So when I did this question last year, I actually wrote about Red Cloud's War, not really paying attention, because I saw these two, I was like, oh yes, I know what I'm doing, Red Cloud's War. And I came out of the exam, and everyone was talking about the tiny time bracket, and I was like, wait, is it between 1862 and 1864, really? And so that got me quite worried. But in the end, by results day, the exam board had realised that this question was a little bit dodgy. And they told people marking that people who'd written about Red Cloud's War, or people who'd had this kind of in-the-middle, waffly paragraph where they didn't really have much to talk about because there isn't much to talk about, we all were given full marks. I believe I got, or like, more generous marks. I believe I got full marks on that question. In fact, I know I did, because I only dropped 1 mark across this whole paper. No pressure, guys. I dropped it in the Saxon section as well. Shameful, really. So the way you would do this, I've broken it down like this. So you got, don't know if you can see that. Oh yeah. So 8 marks, and you'd name the event. So Little Crow and what he did. So that would be, you've got to do it in the right order. So you've got to do it in chronological order. Name the event, and then start talking, describe what happened in the event. And then you've got to make sure, you've got to use these little, like, there is a fancy word for them, I can't remember what it was, but these terms that link things to another. So you're like, this caused, this is a consequence of, consequently, because of this, that kind of language that's leading, or this led to is another good one, language that leads on. And then you've got to show how your first event led to the next event, which led to the next event. But even when you're explaining what happened within the event, you're saying, Little Crow did this, which led to the US government doing this, which led to Little Crow doing this, to his, like, tribe doing this, that kind of thing. And then you talk about how the whole of your Little Crow paragraph then links on to your whole of your Colonel Shivington paragraph. So then our next question is our importance question. And if we scroll down, here he is. See what I was talking about earlier. So you have to explain 2 out of these 3 things. So at the start of the thing, you'll tick, or put a cross, actually, through which one you're going to talk about. So in my exam, I think I talked about this one and this one, didn't do the Timber Culture Act one. Though I was reasonably confident on all of those things. But I felt like the Timber Culture Act had less to talk about. So often when you come across this type of question, you will find that you only know about 2 of them, in which case do the 2 that you know stuff about. But if you're in a lucky position like me and you knew about all 3 of them, think about what there is, like what's going to be easier to write about, what you know more about, what there is more to say about generally. So like the Timber Culture Act is only an act, whereas the Johnson County War has several events within it, and Plains Indians' beliefs, well, there's more than one belief. So that's why I chose those two questions. So the way you'd address this, again, you're peeling. So peel, 2 peel paragraphs for each one. So we would do point, evidence, explain, link again. Like where the explain question is going, one reason for, here you're going, one reason for this being important. So rather than one reason for this event happening, you're going, or this thing happening, you're going, one reason for this being important. So what makes something important is something that makes it notable. So say lots of people moved, it's kind of important because it affected a lot of people. And if it affects a lot of people, then it's important. So what makes something notable, what makes something affect people, that's what importance is, essentially. So say you're doing this, the importance of Plains Indians' beliefs about the land, you could say that something like it caused a divide. It was important because it made it difficult for them to communicate because the Plains Indians' beliefs were so different to the settlers' beliefs. Something along those lines. Like the importance is that it's difficult to communicate, and that it being difficult to communicate is, or understand one another, is important because that had implications on the relations between Plains Indian and settlers. Am I making sense? I hope I'm making sense. Right, so yeah, you do 2 peel paragraphs here, and then you'd go down and tick the next one. So in my case, I ticked this one. Though I think I actually did it in the other order, but shush. And and then you do another 2 peel paragraphs here. And that is the end of your first section. And then you look at this and you go, am I doing Anglo-Saxon and Norman England, or am I doing the reigns of King Richard I and King John? In my case, I went, yes, I'm doing Anglo-Saxon and Norman England. You're at a slight disadvantage if you're doing the reigns of Richard I and King John, because you have slightly more pages to turn, so that loses you a tiny fraction of a bit more time. So yeah, were at an advantage, like us Anglo-Saxon lot. So here's the first question. 2 features of the role of tenants-in-chief in Norman England. Now this is a features question. Features questions are simple so long as you can actually think of some features. Once you've thought of the feature, easy peasy, can take a while to think of the feature. What you want to do is you go point, evidence, point, evidence. So your evidence is your spend, statistics, places, events, names and dates. So think of a feature. What is a feature of the role of tenants and chiefs in Norman England? They collected taxes, something like that. And then you add a statistic about it. So you know, they collected this percentage of the revenue, blah, 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 blah. I can't remember stuff off the top of my head well enough to give you an answer there. I haven't revised this topic in a while. And it's also about Normans. Anglo-Saxons I just nerd out about enough that I could probably tell you that kind of stuff off the top of my head. And then you do a second feature, and again back it up with, or talk about it, like a sentence of evidence. Really, you only need 4 sentences. You want one sentence saying, this is the feature, or one feature of the role of tenants-in-chief in Norman England is that they collected tax. I think they collected tax. And then your second sentence would be the sentence saying the little statistic about them. And then you'd do the whole thing again, so that you got 4 sentences. So that's that question nailed. You got that one covered. Explain why Anglo-Saxon monarchs had so much power. That is our next question. So question B. But yeah, your 5th question, but technically question 4B is a 12 marker. I have a whole video on how to do that, but essentially 3 peel paragraphs. And here's an interesting point actually. When I did this one here, Trying to think what it was. I think it might have been landholding? Yeah, landholding. That's difficult to talk about with Anglo-Saxon monarchs. I think it was landholding, but I just flat out didn't put that as a paragraph. I only used this bullet point. Because I think in the exam I was thinking about landholding changed massively when the Normans came to power. So like William the Conqueror owned like 1/5 of the whole of the country's land just outright. I mean, technically he owned the whole of the land, but 1/5 of it was like properly crown land. And so I was like, but landholding is where the Norman kings had the power. So I was like, I'll come up with a second, like another extra bullet point. So rather than using these two as my paragraphs, I used just this one, and I used 2 others of my own knowledge, my own ideas. It's absolutely fine to not use any of these if you can't think of anything to say about them. That's an important thing to note. So I did a peel paragraph about lawmaking, I think, and I did a peel paragraph about 2 other things. I don't remember what the 2 other things I talked about were. But yeah, make sure you're linking back to the question, that's important. And I mean, this is reasonably simple. I've broken it down in a video. So if you're unsure, go watch my how to answer a 12-mark explain question video, because I do a lot better of a job breaking it down there. And then this leads us on to our final question, which is the 16 marker. Here we go. Now, we had a choice here. William's victory at the Battle of Hastings, or the destruction of lives and property was the main consequences of the harrying of the North. Obviously, this is the question you want to go for. The Battle of Hastings is like the absolute most important thing in that whole topic, and everyone's heard of the Battle of the Hastings. Clearly I haven't heard of it. The Battle of Hastings. I mean, the harrying of North is still quite an important bit, but like when you've got an outright Battle of Hastings question, obviously that's the one you want to go for. Blessing of a question. Hopefully you'll get something similar on your paper. Now, 16 marker is very similar to a 12 marker, so you've got 3 peel paragraphs. This is going to be your first peel paragraph, this will be your second peel paragraph, and your information of your own will be your third idea. That's your own idea, that will be your third paragraph. But with a 16 marker, you also need an introduction. It doesn't have to be anything major, you can just be like, introduce the topic with like a couple of sentences. It doesn't really matter if it's not that much of an introduction, so long as it is some sort of an introduction, and you need a conclusion. And your conclusion will be something like, therefore I think that the main reason for, or I agree that the main reason for William's victory at the Battle of Hastings was the tactics used by the Normans. And then you go, this is because the Normans had mounted knights, and also you've got the March from Stamford Bridge, which is argument for the opposite side, because it's suggesting that actually it was bad luck for Harold Godwinson. So you could be like, and then you'd say, I'm not explaining myself very clearly here, the mounted Norman knights are a reason. Also, the feigned retreat, you would probably be a nice one to talk about. And however, whilst the March from Stamford Bridge was a reason for Harold's loss that wasn't like Norman tactics, it still doesn't outweigh the importance of the mounted Norman knights and the feigned retreat, that kind of thing. That would be like your conclusion, in a more nicely written out way. Not the waffly way I just explained it. I don't feel like I think I probably would have argued against that because of my personal feelings towards the Anglo-Saxons. I'd be like, no, it's not the Normans, don't give the Normans credit, the Anglo-Saxons were the best. But, I don't know, looks like it's easier to argue the other way. Doesn't really matter though, because I sincerely doubt you'll get the exact same question as we did last year. So that should be your 16 marker nailed, done perfectly. You've just got full marks on your exam. I've told you that you're getting full marks on your exam now, so you are getting full marks on your exam. I didn't get full marks on this exam. I lost a mark. So yes, hopefully that's a good overview of everything, like exam technique wise, that you need for that paper. Couple of things, like try and walk confidently into the exam hall, that kind of thing. Keep yourself chill. Like, don't revise on the morning of the exam unless you've done absolutely no revision. Like, so long as you've done some revision, you're banned from revising on the morning of the exam. If you have done absolutely no revision, then you may as well cram in the morning, because it's the best you're gonna. Please don't have done no revision. Like, you've got a couple of days, do some revision. Hopefully you've already started. Yeah, don't revise on the morning of the exam, because that will start to stress you out. Keep chill. I recommend doing sport the night before. I went out on roller skates. Since then I've changed to skateboard because I prefer skateboarding. I'm better at it. Yeah, go roll around. Pick up a new hobby, something like that. It's a new sport. I was useless at skateboarding. I'm still pretty useless, but less useless than I was because I've been out doing it a lot. That kind of thing gets you nice and chill. I went out like roller skating with a group of mates before the exam, like there were 3 or 4 of us. Gets you in a nice, good mood. Went skateboarding the night before my AS history exam as well. Do something like that. Keep yourself chill. Do some revision, but no revising on the morning. Any other important advice? Me? There's no one to ask except myself. So, in terms of general advice before the exam, get a good night's sleep, which is easier said than done, because whenever you're thinking about getting a good night's sleep, it's quite difficult. But I'd recommend the evening before, say like after dinner, stop revising. Don't revise on the morning of the exam, just like completely block it out, unless it's an afternoon exam, in which case it's pretty difficult to avoid revising because you'll often have like a masterclass in that subject or something like that. But like, try your best not to revise from about the after dinner the night before. Go outside with some friends after dinner. Preferably get something fun, like get a frisbee or something like that. I went out, got some roller skates and went out roller skating over exam season. I was like, I'm going to use exam season to become good at roller skating. What instead ended up happening is my friend who didn't have roller skates brought a skateboard. I tried out her skateboard and decided that skateboarding was for me and not roller skating. So these days I travel everywhere by skateboard and went skateboarding before my AS exams. But like, do something active, frisbee, a ball, something, skateboard if you're cool enough to have a skateboard. Anything that's a bit chill, but also sporty, active, will get you in a nice good mood, get you a nice night's sleep, and then hopefully you'll be nice and chill the morning before. Walk into your exam confidently, that kind of thing. Smile at the invigilators. It helps. Every little thing. Man spread once you're at your desk. One more thing. I'm going to be doing a stream on Wednesday night, so the night before paper 2, which is on Thursday afternoon, in case you've forgotten since the start of the video. A stream where I cover the whole topic for Anglo-Saxon and Norman England. I say might. I'm probably not going to have time to cover the whole of the American West, unfortunately, as well. But I might be able to, like, if you have any questions about it, I can answer it on stream. If you have any questions about exam technique generally, then you can ask me about that on stream. Obviously, if you've got any questions about Norman Conquest stuff, I can answer that. Other topics, I have a superpower relations textbook, so I might be able to use a textbook to answer some of those questions, but I can't make any promises on the other topics, but there's no harm in asking. Yeah, so I'll see you during the stream. Even if you're not doing any of those topics, just come chill. Come join the gang. It'll be good. That's what I command you to do the night before your exam. Oh, I forgot to say, we're Southier Harler. Get all the marks. Answer all the questions correctly, that's a good piece of advice. Know all the things that you need to know, another excellent piece of advice. Credit me if you get a grade 9. Or if you get anything good. Like, it doesn't have to be grade 9. If you were going to fail and you passed, or even if you were going to get a 0, but now you've got like a grade 2 because you watched my videos, credit me. I want all credit for all of your GCSEs.